Welcome back to Educator.com's English Grammar course. This lesson is on predicates. Let's get started. All right, we're going to begin with an overview. To start with, we're going to ask, what is a predicate? We're going to find out what they are and how they work. We're going to look at both single and compound predicates. And we're going to look at how predicates affect sentence patterns with a special focus on linking verbs and complements. All right, what is a predicate? The predicate of a sentence is the verb. Remember, that's the one word you absolutely have to have in an English sentence. And anything that logically belongs with it. Objects, modifiers, and complements. Now, what are those things? Objects receive the action of the verb. They're going to be covered in more detail in the next lesson in the series. Modifiers alter the action of the verb. There we're talking about adjectives, adverbs, prepositional phrases. And finally, complements equate to the subject of the sentence. That's what's on the other side of a linking verb. The predicate usually ends the English sentence. It's usually the last part. So we have the sentence here, I love to draw. The subject is I, the verb is love, and the predicate as a whole, the thing that I do, is love to draw. All right, the single predicate. In a sentence with a single predicate, a given subject performs only one action, only one verb. Now here's the thing, it's possible to have a compound subject and a single predicate. You can have more than one subject performing the same action. Let's look at some examples. A good neighbor helps when asked. The subject here is neighbor. Helps is our verb, and helps when asked is the entire activity, the whole predicate. All right, the bird, our subject, twittered in the tree. Well, twittered is our verb. In the tree is a prepositional phrase, but it's modifying twittered. Where did the bird twitter? In the tree. All right, then we have John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote many of the Beatles' songs. John Lennon and Paul McCartney. We have a compound subject, two individuals, both named. But they did one activity. They wrote, the verb, many of the Beatles' songs. And many of the Beatles' songs is the object of the verb wrote. It's what they wrote. So you can have a compound subject, Lennon and McCartney, who performing a single predicate. One action, they wrote many of the songs. All right, compound predicates. In a sentence with a compound predicate, a given subject performs more than one action. And the key here is that you have more than one verb. All right, let's look at some examples. A good neighbor helps when asked and respects others' privacy. That's two different activities performed by the same subject, a good neighbor. All right, the bird twittered in the tree and fluttered away. Two different actions performed by the same subject, bird. John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote many of the Beatles' songs and sang on their records. Once again, you have a compound subject, but also a compound predicate. Two people performing two actions together. All right, predicates and sentence patterns. The basic pattern of the English sentence is subject-predicate. That's how most of them work. There are, however, different kinds of predicates, and so there are four major patterns to the English sentence that we need to recognize. First and most common pattern, subject followed by verb. Robert, our subject, gives generously. We have our subject, our verb, and there's our predicate. Very simple, very basic, easy to recognize. Now, you also have subject, linking verb, complement. Robert, our subject, is our verb, generous. Complement. Now remember, linking verbs are any verb you can replace with an equal sign. So you could just as easily say Robert equals generous. This is another very common pattern for an English sentence. All right, the third pattern is subject, verb, direct object. Now the direct object is whatever receives the action of the verb. We'll cover it in detail in the next lesson. But again, we have our subject Robert, gives, our verb, gifts, D-O. Gifts are receiving the action of the verb gives. What does he give? He gives gifts. What do Lennon and McCartney write? They write songs. The fourth pattern is subject, verb, indirect object, direct object. Now an indirect object receives the direct object instead of the action of the verb. So, Robert, our subject, gave, our verb, me, an indirect object, a gift, the direct object. The gift was what actually received the giving, but me is who received the gift. All right, let's look at linking verbs a little more closely. In some sentences, the base verb is a linking verb, a verb that links a subject to its complement. The complement is the part of the predicate that describes or renames the subject. Very often it's either an adjective or a noun that can be exchanged with the subject. Remember, a linking verb is a verb that you can replace with an equal sign. So, in the sentence, I am a painter, you could say I equals painter. They're synonymous. Once in a blue moon equals once every 2.5 years. The cat equals affectionate. When to be is the base verb, it is a linking verb. If to be is the base verb of your sentence, it is acting as a linking verb. Descriptive verbs such as become, feel, appear, look, seem, taste, sound, and smell are often linking verbs as well. Not always, but often. The trick is to look for a complement. So, that soup smells delicious. Soup is the subject. Smells delicious is our predicate. Smells is our verb. It's a linking verb, so we can replace it with an equal sign. Soup equals delicious. The ruins appeared lonely. Ruins is our subject. Appeared lonely is our predicate. Appeared is our verb. And we can replace it with an equal sign. Ruins equal lonely. After years of study, Joseph, our subject, became an architect. Became an architect is our predicate. It's what Joseph did. Became is our verb, and it can be replaced with an equal sign. Joseph equals architect. All right, if a predicate does not have a subject complement, the verb is not a linking verb and cannot be replaced with an equal sign. So, we have the quotation, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Corrupts is obviously our verb. Power is our subject. Our predicate is corrupts absolutely. But absolutely is not a subject complement. You couldn't say power equals absolutely. It wouldn't make any sense. Absolutely, among other things, is an adverb. So you do not have a subject complement, so corrupts cannot be a linking verb, and in fact it never is. Luke loves bacon. Luke is our subject. Loves is our verb, but you couldn't say that Luke equals bacon. It wouldn't make any sense. So loves is not a linking verb. Now, you remember we talked about how appear can be a linking verb. Well, it isn't always. The ghost ship, ship is our subject, appeared suddenly out of the fog. Appeared is definitely our verb, but it's not acting as a linking verb here, because you couldn't say ship equals suddenly out of the fog. Suddenly is an adverb. So even though appeared suddenly out of the fog is our predicate, appeared is not working as a linking verb in this case. All right, see if you can find the predicates of these sentences and underline the verbs. The most popular fruit in the world is the mango. Sherlock Holmes solved the crime and caught the murderer. Contrary to popular belief, most species of snakes are not poisonous. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. And there we are. The most popular fruit in the world is the mango. Our subject here is fruit, since all these other words are modifiers modifying fruit. What does the fruit do? It is the mango. Is our verb. It's a linking verb, so the subject complement is mango. And there's our complete predicate. Now, our second sentence, we had a compound predicate. Sherlock Holmes solved the crime and caught the murderer. Two actions. Solved is our verb with the direct object crime, and caught is our verb with the direct object murderer. Contrary to popular belief, most species of snakes, our subject here is species, are not poisonous. What are we saying snakes do? They are not poisonous, or rather the species are not poisonous. Again, linking verb with the subject complement, not poisonous. All right, see if you can find the predicates and underline the verbs in this passage. A dog was crossing a stream with a piece of meat in its mouth. He trotted over the bridge, looked down, and saw his reflection in the water. The dog mistook his reflection for another dog and another piece of meat. Eager for an extra meal, the dog snapped at the image. However, when he opened his mouth, he dropped his meat into the water and so went hungry because of his greed. It's a fable from Aesop. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. And there we are. A dog was crossing a stream with a piece of meat in its mouth. That's the whole action that the dog, our subject, was performing. He trotted over the bridge, one action, looked down, another action, and saw his reflection in the water. Three actions, compound predicate. The dog mistook his reflection for another dog and another piece of meat. Eager for an extra meal, the dog, which is our subject pretty much the whole way through, snapped at the image. However, when he opened his mouth, which is a subordinate clause, so we're not looking at it today, he dropped his meat into the water and so went hungry because of his greed. In each case, the predicate of the sentence is the action performed by the dog. Let's look at another example. Here's another fable. One day a lion went out hunting and caught a mouse. The mouse begged for its life and promised to help the lion someday. The lion laughed and let the mouse go. Later, the lion went creeping through the jungle and fell into a net. He roared for help, but no one came. Finally, the mouse heard him, recognized his voice, and ran to help. The mouse chewed through the ropes and rescued the lion. Take a good look. See if you can find the verbs and the predicates that they're in. Pause the video if you need to. And here we are. One day a lion went out hunting and caught a mouse. We have a compound predicate there. The mouse begged for its life and promised to help the lion someday. The lion laughed and let the mouse go. The story is just full of compound predicates. Later, the lion went creeping through the jungle and fell into a net. He roared for help, but no one came. Now, this is a bit interesting. We have here what's called a compound sentence. It's actually two sentences stuck together. We have two subjects and two predicates. He is the subject of the verb roared for help, but no one is the subject of the verb came. Two predicates, two subjects. Finally, the mouse heard him, recognized his voice, and ran to help. Three actions, compound predicate, single subject, mouse. The mouse chewed through the ropes and rescued the lion. So whenever you're looking for the predicate, just look for the action performed by the subject. That's really all it is. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching Educator.com.